You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Joe George here with you as always. The Bulls lose 127-108 to the Minnesota Timberwolves, move to 22-30 on this season. Today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So on today's show, we're going to talk about this slow start that happened, how the Bulls scored a ton of points, all of a sudden had the lead again in the first half, and then, of course, they gave it away in the fourth as Anthony Edwards was trying to go for a 50-burger, the best and worst moments of this game. And then when the third segment, we'll talk about the breaking news that happened during the game in which Lonzo Ball was not playing, that he signed a contract extension with the Bulls, and the latest rumors around Trey Jones, Nikola Vucevic, and anything else we can pick up from today's news and notes as the deadline quickly approaches in the next, 16 hours or so, at least from when we go live. So this game starts off bizarre. Look, the Bulls scored 6 points and were trailing by 21 in the first 7 minutes of this game. They then scored 46 points and had the lead 12 minutes later. What a weird start for a game. They're not even really doing anything wrong. The Minnesota Timberwolves just come out absolutely cooking. They have 10 threes before the Bulls have 4. They're ripping shots left and right, and they're just getting cooked. Now, the first possession of this game, we knew it was going to be a long night. It ended up not being as bad as we thought, but the first possession of the game was brutal. Honestly, not sure I've seen this happen very many times, if ever. I've watched a lot of basketball in my life, whether it's the Bulls, I cover the Rockets here in Houston, watched a lot of college basketball, watched a lot of high school basketball. 5 rebounds on the first possession of the game. Minnesota finally, or 4 rebounds, 5 shots on the first possession of the game. Minnesota finally scores, and Billy Donovan calls a timeout, 30 seconds into the game? Was it even 30 seconds? I mean, it was a disaster start for the Bulls to let that many offensive rebounds. Was a huge story for this game. That happened throughout the entire game. A big reason why they lost this one is because of the second shots that the Timberwolves were getting. And it wasn't a size thing, which the Timberwolves had the advantage on. It was a boxing out effort thing, where throughout the entire game, the Timberwolves were getting these long contract extensions. Not contract extension, Lonzo Ball's on my mind. These long rebounds out to the three-point line, and then they're just putting up shots and they're scoring time and time again. So the Bulls just didn't box out well in this game at all. And besides the slow start, I think that's the number one thing you point to in this game. We did see modest Buzelis that now on a back-to-back where Lonzo Ball didn't play in this game. He was busy getting paperwork done. Tonight, we saw modest Buzelis get his first start as a member of the Bulls. He had a good night, not obviously the performance he had in last night's game, but 14 points, 4-10 from the field, 0-4 from the three-point line, but he has 5 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 steals in this game. Again, failed poster attempt. I feel like he's just prepping right now. Whatever notes Zach LaVine gave him on the way out the door and these apparent late-night practices that were happening for Modest Buzelis in the dunk contest. But we saw him again in the fourth quarter go up for a major poster. He didn't get it. But this game was just all about that slow start and then overcoming it. And that's really what cost the Bulls. Again, and then what happened there. So it's 14-2. Billy Donovan has to call another timeout with 6 minutes and 54 seconds left to go in the first quarter. It was 22-4 at that point. That's where the Bulls go on their first 10-0 run. It's 27-16. They're down 39-30. Kobe White has 11. Vucevic has 8. And in the first half, we saw Jalen Smith have a really good first half of basketball. He scored 12 points. Well, he only had 14 in the game, but he was super efficient in the first half of the game. And the Bulls went on a 14-2 run after that point. They were up 58-53 right before the news broke that Lonzo Ball had got his contract extension. And then Anthony Edwards 3 there puts them the Timberwolves up 62-60 at halftime. And look, the Bulls, again, in the third quarter, Javon Carter hits a 3. It gives them an 82-79 lead. But Anthony Edwards was just going off in this game. It was 94-90 when really it felt like he and the Timberwolves bench, for the most part, like where it felt like that was a moment where the Bulls could have really made a push in this game. The Timberwolves bench really dominated for the most part. But again, the second chance points was a huge thing in this game. The offensive rebounds, the Timberwolves had, holy cow, I didn't think it was going to be this high of a number. The Minnesota Timberwolves had 23 offensive rebounds. The Bulls only had 28 defensive rebounds on the night. I knew it was a big difference in a number, but my gosh, 23 offensive rebounds on the night. The Bulls did not have a bad night turning the ball over, only 11 of them, but you cannot just have you're not going to win basketball games no matter whether you're a good team, a bad team, somewhere in the middle team like the Bulls still currently stand, at least in terms of the play-in tournament, still being in there at this very moment. But you're not going to win basketball games when you give up 23 offensive rebounds. It's just not going to happen. And it's not like they were getting beat up in the paint where Vucevic was outmatched or Patrick Williams or Jalen Smith. Again, it was just long offensive rebounds on deep shots or three-pointers that were going right back to the Timberwolves, and they just couldn't get it done. I thought Kobe White had a really good game tonight overall. He was very effective in the first half. Like I said, 11 points. He ends up with 20 on the night, 4 or 6 from the three-point line, so he was playing really well. Josh Giddy had a good night. I know the plus-minus on these guys all looks pretty terrible, but that's going to happen when you start as slow as they did. Josh Giddy, 19 points, only 4 assists and 4 rebounds himself, so not the biggest numbers. Vucevic adds another double-double to his record on the season. He continues just to pile those things on and on again, but that slow start kills you. The offensive rebounding for the Minnesota Timberwolves is going to give you no chance to win these games, and that's something that, again, with where this team stands, you talk about what can improve, what can get better, what are you looking for in the future. Tonight's a good example of, yes, it's a back-to-back, but when you play Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry on Saturday and Draymond Green potentially, I don't even know what his status is right now, assuming Jimmy Butler's going to play for the Warriors on Saturday, you gotta rebound better. You gotta box out better. It's not a good enough effort on a night in and night out basis. And no matter what you want of the Bulls season to end up, whether it is a tank and have a top lottery pick, you are for some reason wanting them to be a play-in team, which I think is really still only the Reisendorf family that really truly wants that. Maybe AK, if he's really not going to make any other trades at the deadline. Performances like this, no matter what, are just not good enough for what you want to build as a roster. And so that's tough. To have that first time out, less than 40 seconds into a basketball game on the Timberwolves' first possession is brutal. Billy Donovan having to do that at the start of the first quarter, and then he had another one again at the start of the third quarter where they had another terrible start, and he had to go early to the timeout. That also is something that they're good timeouts, right? Like, I'm not complaining about like the action of the timeout, but the fact that so consistently this year, no matter who's out there for the Bulls, that the offensive rebounding of the other team and the lack of defense and then getting back on your man that leads to second chance points in these early starts of these quarters is something that I think is one of the biggest, I would say, red flags about the Bulls this entire year. That too often Billy Donovan is having to go to a timeout within the first 2 minutes of a quarter. Like I said, the first possession of the quarter tonight of the game, where the Minnesota Timberwolves get 5 shots, finally score 3, and then, of course, like we've gone over here, we know what happens next. They go on an absolute run. So we're going to do the show a little bit out of the order. Normally, the third segment is the best and worst, but because of what happened mid-game with Lonzo Ball, we're going to do the best and worst next of tonight's game. A lot of the similar stuff, but moments in this game we did not specifically hit on. So we'll get to that next here on the Locked On Bulls postcast on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Looking for tickets for your next big event? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Gametime Picks for a while now, and here's why I love it. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. I recently grabbed a super deal for a prime seat. I couldn't believe the value. It was an absolute steal. The seat view feature is a game changer. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue, in any venue. It's so reassuring. And the best part, you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. All right, best and worst moments of tonight's game. A bunch of options to choose from here, obviously, and the worst. We'll start with the best. Modest Buzelis, 5th straight game with double-digit points. So he continues to perform well in his newfound role in this team. Obviously, we won't see him be a starter all the time. This was probably just something we'll see on back-to-backs. But also, I like this. This is one of the best parts of the game, too. Overall, I really like Billy Donovan's philosophy here. Reward the guy for what he did in last night's game. He played excellent. He was perfect on the night, 10 for 10. You know Lonzo Ball is going to be out. Put Modest Buzelis in the lineup. It's not his fault, that slow start that happened. They did obviously make a quick lineup change as they were trying to come back, but that's not something I think we look at Modest being the starter as a reason why, specifically because we see the Bulls do it all the time. Josh Giddy did something that the stat itself kind of astonishes me of where he's at. Again, I'm not the biggest Giddy guy, considering he's a restricted free agent. You have 7 guards on the roster. You just extended Lonzo Ball, but you don't close with him. But Josh Giddy tonight became the 3rd player in the NBA this season with 500 points, 300 assists, and 300 rebounds on the year. He joins LeBron James and Nikola Jokic. You think he would be a lot better than he is if he's going to be in that category. And it's not like he's a bad basketball player, but to have any statistic in which you are one of 3 people and you are only around LeBron James and Nikola Jokic and you can't close a basketball game when it's crunch time is wild to me. That's a very cool stat for Josh Giddy. It does show that he is a very good all-around basketball player. Even the 3 that he ended up with, 3 threes tonight, 3 for 5. His shooting looked good in this one. Again, like his rebound and assist numbers are not typically where they're at, hence why he's in those categories of 500 points, 300 rebounds, 3 assists. So a little lacking in that area, which is obviously something the Bulls need from him pretty consistently to try to win basketball games, which is something that they still may or may not totally entirely be trying to do. But a cool thing for Josh Giddy to be a part of in this game. I think the other Modest play that really stands out, besides Kobe White's just like overall like solid night from the 3-point line and overall, the dunk that Modest had, which was Kobe White's in the paint, Modest Buzelis is cutting from the corner, he gets it, 2-handed slam. Very good play to see there. It's one of my biggest pet peeves with the Bulls this year. It's too much standing around, not enough cutting into the hoop, too much of just waiting for someone to take a 3. And a lot of times, yes, like there are good shots they find by just, whipping it around the 3-point line. But still overall, like I think the Bulls don't cut to the hoop enough on the season. So something I hope that with more Modest Buzelis throughout the year, that we continue to see from him and maybe spark some things in the offense. Io, Kobe White, both those guys had a couple good moments tonight driving to the lane. And again, that Jalen Smith, 12 points in the first quarter, a really good night for him. Surprised we didn't see like a lot more Vooch. I'm not really. I'm like most people. I don't view. I know he has a bunch of Defensive Player of the Year awards, but like I really capital F fraud for me for Rudy Gobert. So I'm surprised we didn't see a little bit more of Nikola Vucevic attacking the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight in this game. But look, it's a back-to-back. Like, not every game's going to be perfect, obviously, especially with the Chicago Bulls. So, worst moments of tonight's game. That first possession, again, 5 shots, 1 make, timeout within 30 seconds of a basketball game starting. 4 offensive rebounds for the for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Had Jokic on my mind. For the Minnesota Timberwolves to start there. It leads to the fact that, again, they had 23 offensive rebounds on the night to the Bulls, 6 offensive rebounds. The Timberwolves overall, definitely one of the worst parts, not just the offensive rebounds. They out-rebounded the Bulls 59-34 on the night. So the Bulls just got absolutely beat up on the glass on both sides of it, offensively and defensively in this game. Anthony Edwards, not a career night for him, but he tried to go for it at the end there. He got 49 points in this game. His 4th career game with 45 plus. So he has a astonishing night. Again, he's an incredible basketball player. Like, there's not much to beat up on, honestly. Like, it's Anthony Edwards. He's one of the probably 5 best players in the NBA right now. Like, he's going to get his incredible performance. The Bulls really for the most part, like they did okay against him. But there in the third and fourth quarter, he absolutely just dominated and took over this basketball game in a way that you dream a Bulls player will again be able to do one day. But it shows you why Minnesota was so feared in the playoffs last year, will be feared again this year, even without, with this new look team that I still think like they have to have some major Karl Anthony Towns regret and moving on from him for Julius Randle. But we'll see if they do anything interesting at the deadline to try to correct some of that stuff. So Anthony Edwards goes off. The second chance points, they were just dominating you. And again, that first possession. This one goes somewhere in the middle here, the best and worst. I do think that, we are now at the point in the Bulls season where the Minnesota Timberwolves, they beat you. But on this night, it looks like the Philadelphia 76ers final score is they lost 108-101. As the Heat bench found out on the sidelines while they're sitting there. There's a video going around of a fan telling Kevin Love and a couple other guys that Jimmy Butler had been traded and that Andrew Wiggins and others were coming to town. The Sixers lose 108-101. So the Bulls still here today sit at 19 and a half games out of first place. Obviously, they're not getting that. The Philadelphia 76ers 20 and a half back. So the Bulls still remain one game ahead of the Philadelphia 76ers for that final play-in spot. So the full tank can't be on just yet. You got to get out of the play-in tournament first to fully get this tank headed in the direction that all fans really want it to go. But even said, with all that stuff, best and worst moments of the game, worst is being down so many points. Best is at least making a game of it, because it felt like this final score early on was going to be like 200-50. The way the game started. Obviously, we know that's how basketball games don't really work, but to be down that early in the first quarter to then come back in the first half and retain a lead is something that I think does matter for the long-term future, again, of the Bulls, for at least the guys that are on this roster. You don't want a bunch of quitters on this team, and they could have rolled over and died in this game. So we're at the moral victory part of the Chicago Bulls season. So I will consider that somewhere in the middle of best and worst moments of tonight's game versus the Timberwolves in the loss that moves the Bulls to 22-30 on the year. All right, in the middle of the game here, in the second quarter, we got breaking news from Casey Johnson that Lonzo Ball had been extended. We also got a report from him and some others about what's going on with the Bulls, as we are just a handful of hours away from the NBA trade deadline. So we'll get into that next, our final segment here on the Locked On Bulls postcast on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags we should avoid. But what if we focus more on identifying the positive signs in our relationships, those green flags? If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify them, actively practice them, and even embody that green flag energy yourself. Whether you're dating, married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself, therapy can help you form relationships that love you back. Therapy helps you develop healthy boundaries and improves your communication skills. It empowers you to set clear expectations and express your needs in relationships. Therapy provides tools for managing conflict in ways that strengthen your connections rather than break them down. BetterHelp makes it easy by offering online therapy with over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from. And if you need to switch therapists, you can do so at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so second quarter, Casey Johnson puts out a tweet. What's this? What's going on here on the timeline? What's going on with Lonzo Ball? He's tweeting about Lonzo Ball. Has Lonzo Ball been traded? No, Lonzo Ball's been extended. Lonzo Ball in the middle of this game is extended by the Chicago Bulls. Clutch Sports, I believe, is his agency. Gets a 2-year deal, $20 million. The second year is a team option. So look, there's a bunch of rumors flying around. Like, what are the Bulls going to do? They're getting calls from Lonzo. We start to hear the stuff. I think it was from Mark Stein and his Substack today or late last night that the Bulls were considering this, giving him the extension, because reportedly what they wanted, which Casey Johnson reported before the game, was that the Bulls wanted to get draft assets back with no long-term contracts. That because Lonzo Ball was going to be a free agent at the end of the year, if they were going to lose him, they'd rather just let him walk instead of bringing a contract that lasts 3 or 4 years. You look at the guys they traded for, Is it Trey Jones is a free agent at the end of the season. Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins are free agents. I think I have this right, at the end of 2026. So the three guys they put in, none of them are in theory going to be on the roster after next season. So the Bulls didn't want to bring back someone else that was going to be on the roster going into the 2027 season. I'm okay with that philosophy. I think the Bulls should be tearing this thing down to its studs and be getting what you can, but I don't think that requires the Bulls to take on bad contracts. You can fill those contracts in the offseason with other guys. So the Bulls decide to go the opposite route, and they say, you know what, Lonzo Ball, like his leadership, like everything about it, the way his teammates talk about him, how beloved he is in the locker room, and he gets his contract extension. We talked about this last night. I would have been pro trading Lonzo, but if the only way you were going to move him was to get back one of these long-term contracts, and to be honest, do I trust the Bulls front office that they didn't have a good deal on the table that wasn't just to their standard and they turned it down, and this is where they ended up with Lonzo? No, I don't trust them. But the idea of this, I do understand, and I can be in supportive, I would say, because even if it's just one more season with Lonzo, like this team is going nowhere fast. They have a veteran leader on this team, someone that has busted his ass to get back on the court for you and for himself, but for you. Could have demanded a trade as soon as he started playing healthy and demanded to go somewhere else. But also with this deal, it's a two-year $20 million deal. Like trading Lonzo Ball, if you want to now in the offseason or next year's deadline, just became infinitely easier than at the $20 million price tag that he's at right now. So I think this is a wise move for the Bulls because if you really want to be stubborn with the standards that you're asking for in trades, then like that's what you get. This is what happens. But to let him just walk also probably doesn't make a ton of sense. So this is kind of that happy medium where you keep Lonzo around for at least one more season or to the start of the next season. Or again, they could trade him in the offseason. Like they could trade him. He could just play the rest of this year and then be gone. But it's a fine decision because Zach asked here earlier when the show started, why do the Bulls also try to be sneaky with contract extensions, aka Billy, Lonzo? That's a great question. I think the Bulls actually, like, to their credit, I can't believe I'm gonna have to do this. They just don't have a lot of leaks in their organization. Like they keep things pretty tight-lipped. This one to me seems to be not as secretive of the Billy Donovan and AK extensions that have happened and things that have been reported on. This one, at least we had some knowledge going in that Lonzo could be here for a little bit longer as a member of the Bulls. So we'll see how it plays out. My expectation is at some point Lonzo will be traded, especially if he continues to play. Like he will be, part of the trade conversation, I would imagine, is if you're one of the other teams, is you can't be totally bought back in yet, right? Like I know we all want to be. The idea of Lonzo being healthy, minutes growing. I think his dad said on the podcast of, I can't remember his host, whoever was doing play-by-play tonight, and Stacey King's podcast, like he could see him doing, back-to-backs at some point in the future. I don't think anyone like is fully bought in yet. So it's hard to say, okay, this is what his trade value is. Where if he plays the rest of the year, then most likely his trade value will at least go up to some extent into the offseason, potentially just at the trade deadline next year. So I'm fine with it. Casey Johnson also before the game reported that the Bulls' willingness and want to trade Trey Jones was overstated. Now, this one I don't get. I don't get how these things can happen at the same time. You have Trey Jones, you have Lonzo Ball, you have Ayo Dosunmu, you have Kobe White, you have so many guards. You have Javon Carter, who played well in this game. You have Josh Giddy. You have so many guards on this team. Why do you need another one? Like why would the Bulls want to keep another guard? Maybe they, in their mind, thought they could easily flip him, and then once they got him on the team and they started calling other teams, they just can't. So they're trying to make it perception is, to not crush a player on a new team is like, well, no, we really like this guy. So I was expecting Trey Jones to get traded. So it sounds like maybe that's been, overstated, as Casey Johnson said. So we'll wait and hear what happens next. But, Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins, Trey Jones, I feel like at least one of them is going to get moved before this next game. Or we'll see a couple more cuts, like we saw Torrey Craig get cut when the trade first happened. So maybe they don't have to cut him right away, but I think we'll see some more roster changes if the Bulls don't do anything at the deadline. So I don't know if they'll do anything else. Golden State acquires Jimmy Butler for Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, some other piece, and a protected first-round pick. This is like a 5-team trade at this point, so it's almost impossible to remember like who's going where. I don't think it's even fully been reported yet because Miami's trying to flip Kyle Anderson, but they're not sure they can do it, at least at this moment. So this massive 5-team trade. I think that takes them out of Dennis Schroeder went to Miami as well. Read his comments lately about being traded. Sure, he's not going to love going to Utah after what he said recently to NBC Sports Bay Area. But this probably takes them out of the Vooch running, which, again, goes to the reporting that we got from Casey Johnson yesterday, which is that Nikola Vucevic is, at this point, planning to be a member of the Bulls when they play the Warriors and Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry on Saturday. I don't like this. I get Lonzo. You can sell me on Lonzo. The idea of Lonzo Ball being a Bull, leadership, comeback story, cheaper contract, trade him next year. Vooch, bad idea. They should move on from him. They should trade Vooch. There's no question about it. This is a half effort at the deadline. What's the point of trading Zach LaVine if this is all you're going to do? Like, if you keep Vooch, yes, you have a guaranteed lottery pick or a guaranteed first-round pick, but what it means is that the Bulls are not fully tanking, and there's a chance that pick, unless the ping pong balls magically fall your way, end up outside the top 10. And yes, you would have lost that. So now they've guaranteed they can keep it. Congratulations. You might have the 14th pick in the NBA draft if you don't trade Vooch. It's the only way I think they for sure tank out and get into the top 10. Because the East, the Bulls are bad, yes, but the 76ers, again, lose. Paul George, terrible. Joel Embiid, barely out there. They will likely eventually pass the Bulls, but are you going to pass Brooklyn, Toronto, who's won 6 of their last 10? Charlotte's not going to catch you. Obviously, Washington, unless Chris Middleton, which is a weird trade, gets them out of the gutter. Like, the Bulls are probably, my gut tells me at worst, going to be like 12th in the Eastern Conference, which would be good, like in terms of like getting a top draft pick, but you would guarantee that if you traded Vooch from this team, because Jalen Smith as your starting center is not going to lead to massive productivity in these games. So I think it's a huge mistake that if we do the show on Saturday and Nikola Vucevic is still a member of the Bulls, there's no logic behind it. There's no reason behind it besides absolute stubbornness. And I really don't understand how AK in the front office can look themselves in the mirror and say, this is the absolute best direction for the Chicago Bulls, is keeping this guy instead of just trading him for whatever assets you could get, trying to get 3 seconds and turn those into a first in 2031. I don't know. Like, do something. But at least for now, it seems like Nikola Vucevic is going to stay a member of the Chicago Bulls. We'll see if that changes. Trade deadline is now about, it's 2 o'clock, I believe, Central Time. So we are about 16 hours away, I think it is now, from the NBA trade deadline. So we'll wait and see. So we'll see what happens on Saturday when we are back here with you for another one of these postcast shows. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you're checking us up on YouTube for the first time. If you're watching on YouTube, remember we are always available on audio as well, where you can find the Locked On Bulls show, the daily show that they do right now. They're putting out great content. Their audio drops there every single day, Monday through Friday, as well with our postcast shows, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, whatever. So Locked On Bulls there, Locked On Sports Chicago on YouTube, and the Locked On Bulls YouTube channel as well for all the Bulls content you need. So probably an angry show for them tomorrow, I'm going to predict, when Nikola Vucevic is actually not traded by the Bulls. So thanks for watching. Thanks for checking us out. We appreciate you. The Bulls lose again, this time to the Minnesota Timberwolves. We will talk to you next time on Saturday. Peace.